When I bought my cozy little home in the suburban labyrinth known as Oak Hollow Estates, I thought I had finally escaped the chaos of the city. The house, a modest two-story with pale blue siding and a wraparound porch, sat on a quiet cul-de-sac where birds chirped louder than car horns. The lawns were manicured, the neighbors waved in choreographed unison, and every Friday the air was tinged with the scent of grilled meats and fresh mulch. After years of apartment hopping, roommates, and shared parking lots, this home was my retreat. My sanctuary. And the driveway, oh, the glorious stretch of concrete leading up to my garage, was my personal red carpet. 2 cars could fit side by side, and I often took pride in washing my modest Honda Civic there while sipping lemonade. That illusion of suburban bliss shattered just 2 weeks after I moved in. It started small. One morning, I walked out to find a red Mercedes partially parked across my driveway. Not completely blocking it, just enough to force me to do a 3-point turn to get out. I frowned but let it go. Maybe a visitor? A confused neighbor? A mistake. That night, it was gone, and I dismissed it. But the next day, it was a Tesla white with personalized plates that read GR8NS. I assumed someone was visiting the Johnsons across the street. I shrugged and squeezed past it again. On the third day, a black SUV was parked completely perpendicular, practically taunting me. That's when I realized something was off. I started taking photos. Timestamped them. Sent polite messages in the neighborhood group chat. Responses ranged from vague apologies to straight-up silence. I left notes, firm but respectful, taped to the windshields. Please don't block my driveway. This is private property. Thank you. When I bought my cozy little home in the suburban labyrinth known as Oak Hollow Estates, I thought I had finally escaped the chaos of the city. The house, a modest 2-story with pale blue siding and a wraparound porch, sat on a quiet cul-de-sac where birds chirped louder than car horns. The lawns were manicured, the neighbors waved in choreographed unison, and every Friday the air was tinged with the scent of grilled meats and fresh mulch. After years of apartment hopping, roommates, and shared parking lots, this home was my retreat. My sanctuary. And the driveway, oh, the glorious stretch of concrete leading up to my garage, was my personal red carpet. 2 cars could fit side by side, and I often took pride in washing my modest Honda Civic there while sipping lemonade. That illusion of suburban bliss shattered just 2 weeks after I moved in. It started small. One morning, I walked out to find a red Mercedes partially parked across my driveway. Not completely blocking it, just enough to force me to do a 3-point turn to get out. I frowned but let it go. Maybe a visitor? A confused neighbor? A mistake. That night, it was gone, and I dismissed it. But the next day, it was a Tesla white with personalized plates that read GR8NS. I assumed someone was visiting the Johnsons across the street. I shrugged and squeezed past it again. On the third day, a black SUV was parked completely perpendicular, practically taunting me. That's when I realized something was off. I started taking photos. Timestamped them. Sent polite messages in the neighborhood group chat. Responses ranged from vague apologies to straight-up silence. I left notes, firm but respectful, taped to the windshields. Please don't block my driveway. This is private property. Thank you. But the messages seemed to invite more cars. By the end of the week, it had become a daily occurrence. BMWs, Audis, and once even a pickup truck with oversized wheels that made it look like a monster truck rally had come to town. I no longer had a driveway, I had an impromptu car meetup zone. When I brought it up at my first HOA meeting, the president, Cheryl McManus, looked at me like I had asked her to rewrite the Constitution. Cheryl was a woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair, glasses on a chain, and a permanent scowl that could curdle milk. Her clipboard was practically fused to her hand, and her voice carried the nasal authority of a former elementary school teacher who had never let go of the chalkboard. "We appreciate your concern, Mr. Carson," she said, flipping a page with a theatrical sigh. "But you'll have to understand that some residents have multiple vehicles, and sometimes driveways are just, well, shared spaces in a community." "It's not a shared space," I said, trying to keep my tone level. "It's my property. They're parking on my driveway." Cheryl smiled in a way that made me want to launch her clipboard into the sun. "Well, we'll look into it. Thank you for bringing it up." That was the end of it, at least as far as Cheryl was concerned. I came home the next day to find a note pinned to my door. It wasn't from the HOA. It was anonymous, typed in all caps, "Stop making a fuss. It's just parking. This isn't Brooklyn." My hands shook as I read it. My mind raced with possibilities. Which of my pristine, polite neighbors had the audacity to do this? Was it the ever-smiling bakers with the labradoodle? Or maybe Mr. Lee, who jogged at 5 a.m. with military precision? The facades of friendliness began to crumble in my eyes, replaced by suspicion and resentment. The next week was worse. 3 cars at a time now. Sometimes 4. Once a minivan with a school sticker parked there for 2 straight days. I was forced to park 2 blocks away and walk home with groceries. I left a message with the HOAgeddon, attached photos, timestamps, even included a printout of my property boundaries. No response. Then, one night, I returned from a brutal 12-hour shift, grimy, hungry, my shirt stained with coffee and printer toner. As I turned the corner, I saw not 1, not 2, but 4 cars sprawled across my driveway. One of them was parked at an angle so egregious it looked like the driver had done it just to be cruel. That was it. My blood boiled. I snapped a photo, sent it to Cheryl, and without hesitation, I called a tow truck. The dispatcher was sympathetic. Said they'd be there in 20 minutes. I waited on my porch, arms crossed, heart pounding. It was the principle of the thing now. This was my home. My property. I wasn't going to be bullied in my own driveway. 25 minutes later, the tow truck arrived, headlights sweeping over the makeshift car showroom. The driver, a tall man named Tito, gave a low whistle. You hosting a car meet or something? I wish I said. They're trespassing. Can you get rid of them? Got the paperwork? I handed over the printouts of my property deed and the HOA plat map I had obsessively highlighted. Tito nodded, got to work, and within minutes the hydraulic arm of justice lifted the first offender into the air. That's when Cheryl arrived. She burst onto my lawn in a lavender robe, slippers flapping, holding a flashlight like it was a medieval torch. What is going on here? She screeched, stomping toward the tow truck. I'm towing the cars that are illegally parked on my driveway, I said evenly. You can't do that. This is an HOA neighborhood. Exactly. Which is why I contacted you repeatedly. And now I'm dealing with it. She turned to Tito. You stop right there. I'm the HOA president. Tito didn't stop. He was already securing the second vehicle. You're going to regret this, Mr. Carson, Cheryl said, her voice trembling with rage. No, I said, with more calm than I felt. I've been regretting not doing this sooner. That night was a turning point. The air shifted. I felt it in the way Cheryl stormed off, muttering threats. I saw it in the neighbors' curtains twitching as they peeked out. Something had broken, not just the unspoken agreement of neighborly tolerance, but the illusion that this place was run by rules and order. The driveway was mine, and they had treated it like a suggestion. They had declared war. But they didn't know I read the rulebook too, and I was ready to fight fire with bylaws. After the night of the tow trucks and torch-bearing Cheryl, the air in Oak Hollow Estates had changed. I could feel it in the subtle way people avoided eye contact, how conversations tapered off when I passed, and in the crisp, clipped tones of HOA newsletters. My lawn was still green, my porch still swept, but now I was the neighbor with teeth, the one who had upset the delicate balance of passive aggression and overly polite tyranny. And I didn't care. For the first time since moving in, I had slept peacefully knowing my driveway was mine again. But peace was short-lived. 2 days later, I received a letter, not an email, not a message slipped in my mailbox, but a certified letter from the HOA. To Mr. Carson. You are hereby notified that your recent actions involving the unauthorized removal of vehicles may be in violation of Section 3.11 of the Oak Hollow Estates Community Conduct Code. As a resident, it is your responsibility to notify the HOA board before engaging in any acts that may affect other members. Continued disregard for these regulations may result in fines or legal action. Sincerely, Cheryl McManus, HOA President. Legal action? Fines? Was she serious? I held the letter in my hand, reading it over and over. Something about it didn't sit right. She was bluffing. She had to be. That night, I did something I hadn't done since college. I pulled an all-nighter. I dusted off the thick HOA binder given to me at closing, and I read it. Every page. Every bylaw. Every contradictory clause, every italicized loophole, every self-important declaration about lawn heights and trash can visibility. I read like a man possessed. By sunrise, I had highlighted, bookmarked, and annotated dozens of passages. My desk was littered with sticky notes and empty coffee mugs. The more I read, the more I realized the HOA's foundation wasn't law, it was interpretation. And the interpretations, conveniently, were all funneled through Cheryl. But then I found it. The golden rule. Bylaw 4.17b. Any vehicle left on private property without written consent of the homeowner for more than 24 hours shall be deemed abandoned and may be removed or disposed of at the discretion of the homeowner. I stared at it for a long time. Highlighted it. Framed it in my mind. That one sentence changed everything. This wasn't a bluff anymore. This was leverage. I drafted a new message to Cheryl and blind copied every resident in the HOA contact list. Effective immediately, any vehicle parked in my driveway without my written permission will be considered abandoned under Bylaw 4.17b and may be removed or disposed of accordingly. This is your official notice. The response? A laughing emoji from Cheryl. One emoji. No words. No context. That was her mistake. I printed that message. Saved it. Timestamped it. Because now this wasn't just about my driveway. This was about setting precedent. About sending a message. Over the next week, I became the neighborhood pariah and myth all at once. People stopped waving. I noticed the Bensons across the street moved their patio chairs so their backs were turned toward my house. The Winslows didn't let their kids ride bikes near my curb. Even the mailman seemed nervous, walking a little faster as he dropped letters into my box. Good. Let them be nervous. Because I wasn't done. My obsession with the bylaws deepened. I turned my living room into a legal war room. I created a spreadsheet cross-referencing vehicle violations, dates, and HOA responses. I cataloged everything: who parked where, how long they stayed, what models they drove. Cheryl's son, I learned, had been parking his truck in a cul-de-sac no-parking zone for 3 months. The Davidsons kept their garbage bins out past the allowed 12-hour window. But I wasn't about petty revenge. Not yet. I just wanted them to follow the rules, their rules. And so I set a trap. The next time someone parked in my driveway, an oversized Escalade with tinted windows and an HOA strong bumper sticker, I did nothing. For 24 hours. I watched it from my window. I noted the time. At 24 hours and 1 minute, I called the same tow company. Tito remembered me. Back at it, huh? Just honoring the bylaws, Tito. We towed the Escalade. No fuss. No confrontation. But Cheryl showed up an hour later. She marched up my porch, this time in full power outfit, shoulder pads, matching skirt, HOA ID badge clipped to her lapel like she was with Homeland Security. Her face was red. Her steps quick and punctuated with fury. You think you're clever, Mr. Carson? I think I'm informed. Want to read the bylaw? I have a laminated copy. You're provoking chaos. You're disrupting the harmony of this community. I'm enforcing the rules you wrote. Isn't that your job, Cheryl? She looked at me for a long moment, eyes narrowing. You want a war? Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. She stormed off. The next day, I was served with a formal HOA citation, creating a hostile living environment. I appealed it, citing Bylaw 2.01c. No citation may be issued without documented evidence of repeated violations. The citation was dropped. This became our pattern. Cheryl would try to trap me with bureaucratic nonsense, and I'd counter with a better interpretation. My reputation spread. I was no longer the quiet guy on Sycamore Lane. I was Carson, the rule reader, the bylaw enforcer. Kids whispered about me. Teens dared each other to run past my driveway. And I didn't care. I wasn't fighting them. I was fighting the HOA machine. And I was winning. Then came the final straw. Cheryl called an emergency meeting. The agenda was clear, rewriting Bylaw 4.17b. I arrived early, binder in hand. The community center was packed, standing room only. Cheryl took her place at the podium, smug and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, recent events have shown that some of our bylaws are outdated and subject to abuse. Therefore, we propose amending Bylaw 4.17b to read, no vehicle may be towed from any property within Oak Hollow Estates without explicit board approval, regardless of location. There were murmurs, whispers, nods. Then I stood. I object. Cheryl blinked. You can't object to a vote. Actually, I can, I said. According to Procedural Clause 7.3, any amendment to existing bylaws must be proposed with at least 2 weeks' notice to all members. This meeting was called within 72 hours. That makes the proposal invalid. Gasps. Someone clapped. Cheryl's face turned beet red. The meeting ended without a vote. I walked out of there with my head high. Not because I wanted to win, but because I wanted them to know I wouldn't be bullied. That my driveway wasn't a parking lot. That I had learned their game and played it better. That night, I printed Bylaw 4.17b on a sign and staked it at the end of my driveway. Below it, in bold letters, no trespassing. All violations will be treated as abandonment. The next day, no one parked there. Not one car. But I knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. I waited. After weeks of standoffs, passive-aggressive notes, and HOA bureaucracy, I sat on my porch like a sentry with a stopwatch and a camera. I'd learned the rules. I had the law on my side, specifically Bylaw 4.17b, the golden ticket that defined vehicles parked on my private property for more than 24 hours without permission as abandoned. Cheryl's attempt to rewrite it had failed. The bylaws were cemented, and now it was my turn to act. 3 cars. That weekend, like clockwork, 3 different vehicles appeared on my driveway: a 2020 Tesla Model 3, sleek, smug, and gleaming in the sun; a 2019 BMW X5 black, tinted windows, arrogance on wheels; and a 2021 Audi A4 silver with custom rims and a vanity plate that read MYWY. It was as if they were dropped there to test my resolve. A final insult. The ghost of Cheryl's control lingering in steel and chrome. I didn't call to complain. I didn't leave notes. I did what I always did now. I documented everything. I took photos of the vehicles as they arrived. I timestamped them. I used a GPS app to tag the coordinates. I printed and laminated a new notice. You are parked on private property without permission. You have 24 hours to remove your vehicle, or it will be treated as abandoned in accordance with Bylaw 4.17b of the Oak Hollow Estates Community Code. I affixed the warnings to each windshield, took a photo of the notes on the cars, then went back inside. And waited. The 24 hours ticked by in silence. No one came. Not a single neighbor knocked. No apologies. No attempts at diplomacy. Just quiet contempt. They thought I wouldn't do it. They thought I'd blink first. That's when I made the decision. If they wanted to play games, I'd turn it into a spectacle. That night, I created the flyers. Simple but bold. Black text on a white background with grainy, unmistakable photos of each offending vehicle. Unofficial Oak Hollow Estate Vehicle Auction. This Saturday, 10 a.m. 1123 Sycamore Lane. Items: 2020 Tesla Model 3, 2019 BMW X5, 2021 Audi A4. No reserve. BYOB. Bring your own bids. I ran off 200 copies at the print shop in town and started the distribution early Friday morning. Mailboxes, street lamps, bulletin boards at the local grocery store, even Cheryl's own announcement corkboard outside the HOA office. I posted the flyer right under a notice about pet leash laws. By Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Anonymous messages. Some in all caps. Others full of legal threats, some even begging for the flyers to be taken down. My favorite simply read, "Are you insane?" Maybe. But they had parked in my driveway. And now I was parking the truth in theirs. Saturday morning, I woke early. Set out folding chairs. Moved the cars into clean, neat rows. Dusted them off. Polished their windshields. I called my cousin Dave from Oklahoma. Dave ran livestock auctions and owned a 10-gallon hat and a voice that could cut through thunder. He arrived an hour later in a pickup, trailer in tow, wearing snakeskin boots and a belt buckle the size of a plate. When I asked him if he could run a car auction, he grinned. "I sold a goat for $5,000 once," he said. "This'll be easy." By 9:45, people started to arrive. Neighbors, strangers, a few tire kickers who looked like they had no intention of buying anything. Word had spread. Someone live-streamed it. Others took photos and muttered in disbelief. It felt less like a neighborhood gathering and more like an event. I saw Cheryl watching from across the street, arms folded, face stone-carved in disbelief. At exactly 10 o'clock, Dave stood on the flatbed of his truck, cowboy hat tipped low, and bellowed into the mic. "Ladies and gents, welcome to the Oak Hollow Estate Vehicle Auction. 3 fine machines, no reserve, no gimmicks, and absolutely no apologies. Let's make some bids." He started with the Audi. Silver 2021 Audi A4, 45,000 miles, leather interior, vanity plate, MYWY included free of charge. "Let's open bidding at $5,000. Hands went up. Bids climbed. The Audi sold for $9,000 to a man from 2 neighborhoods over who towed it away with a smile and a legal bill of sale I drafted myself with a paralegal's help. The Tesla was next. Dave played it up like a prize steer at a county fair. 2020 Tesla Model 3, blue, clean, fast, and oh so smug. You want to make your ex jealous? This is the one. Bidding flew. People laughed. The mood shifted from confusion to celebration. $13,000. Sold. The BMW was last. Less popular, more understated, but Dave still got it up to $8,000. Another clean sale. Another tow. Another victory. And just like that, the auction was over. Dave shook my hand. You sure stirred the hornet's nest, cousin. Good, I said. About time someone did. The real show, however, happened afterward. Cheryl approached as people cleared out, walking with the stiff grace of a woman whose world had just shifted beneath her feet. You've gone too far, she said, voice low. No, I replied. I've gone exactly as far as your rules allow. You can check the citations. I'll be filing the receipts and legal notices this week. Those cars belong to HOA members. Then they should have read the rules before abandoning them. She stared at me, eyes narrowing, mouth opening to speak, but there was nothing she could say. Not really. Because the crowd had seen everything. Because I had followed the rules. Because the bylaws, the ones she so often used to twist others into compliance, had finally been used to unravel her control. Later that night, someone egged my garage door. Another neighbor shouted something about ruining the community as they walked their dog. But no one parked in my driveway. Not once. And the HOA? They convened. They argued. They debated legal action. But the bylaws stood tall. And every lawyer they consulted reportedly told them the same thing. He followed your rules. The next monthly newsletter was more subdued. The tone gentler. New initiatives were proposed. Community parking permits, registration systems, assigned overflow lots. Policies designed with actual fairness in mind. I wasn't invited to that meeting, but I didn't need to be. My driveway was empty, my property respected, and my lawn had never looked greener. The war had shifted, and Cheryl? She would never say it aloud, but from that day forward, her power wasn't absolute. The bylaws, her once sacred scriptures, had been used against her. By me. The weekend after the auction was a quiet one. The kind of quiet that comes after a thunderstorm. The air still damp, the streets glossy with residue, and everyone peeking out from behind curtains wondering if the lightning will return. Oak Hollow Estates, once the land of unspoken grievances and HOA righteousness, now sat simmering under a layer of watchful silence. I sipped my coffee on the porch Sunday morning, legs crossed, driveway clear. No Teslas, no BMWs, no HOA arrogance idling in my space. Just sunlight baking the concrete, the soft rustle of trees, and the weight of something unspoken hanging in the cul-de-sac. The real storm I knew was coming Monday, and it did. Promptly at 8:13 a.m., Cheryl stormed my property with the fury of a woman who'd tasted humiliation and couldn't stand the flavor. But this time she brought company, a police officer in full uniform, the dark blue badge of legitimacy. She didn't knock. She marched straight up to my porch, heels clicking on the wood like gunshots, and pointed at me like she was ordering a firing squad. That's him. That's the man who stole our vehicles. The officer turned to me, impassive. Sir, I need to ask you a few questions. I nodded, calm. I'd seen this coming. Every step had been prepared for. Please, I said, let me show you something. I walked him inside to my carefully curated HOA war room, once my dining area, now a legal fortress. I handed him the laminated copies of Bylaw 4.17b, timestamped photos, certified mail receipts, auction notices, and written documentation of every ignored warning. He flipped through them slowly. Outside, Cheryl was pacing like a wolf denied entry to a chicken coop. Finally, the officer stepped back out and faced her. Ma'am, he said, his voice clipped, professional, bored. This man followed your HOA rules to the letter. This is a civil matter, not criminal. If you have a problem, take it up with your board. She blinked. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Words failed her for once. I stood on the porch behind the officer, sipping the last of my coffee like it was champagne. That silence, the moment she realized even the law wouldn't help her, was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. She turned without a word and marched back to her SUV. It was parked 4 blocks away. Out of an abundance of caution. The HOA meeting that week was hushed. No more emergency votes. No more power plays. People spoke with caution as if worried I'd pop out of a bush quoting Section 5.03 about lawn ornament height restrictions. I wasn't there, of course. But I got a transcript courtesy of a friendly neighbor who'd quietly applauded the auction with a beer from his porch. And then it came, the request. An envelope slid under my door that Friday. Embossed. Formal. A printed invitation with desperate undertones. We, the board of Oak Hollow Estates, cordially invite Mr. Carson to join us as an official HOA advisor and prospective board member. The irony was delicious. For years, Cheryl had ruled like a queen on a sugar throne, and now the one man who'd cracked the candy shell was being asked to join her table. I declined. Respectfully. Because I didn't need a title to have power. Not anymore. I had something far more effective: precedent. My driveway became a symbol. A landmark. A boundary line etched in concrete and reinforced by the law. People who used to ignore property lines now whispered to guests, "Whatever you do, don't park at Carson's." Kids steered their bikes wide. Teenagers told tales. I once caught a man on a jog slow down, admire my clear driveway, and nod solemnly before continuing. Even Cheryl changed. She still walked her dog past my house early mornings, hood up, sunglasses on, but she never met my eyes. Never dared a word. In that silence, a new HOA order emerged. Less aggressive. Less arbitrary. The bylaws remained, but they were now treated with care, not weaponized as tools of control. Meetings shifted from lectures to discussions. The newsletter stopped preaching and started informing. There were no more confrontations. No more threats. And never again, not once, did someone park in my driveway. That space, those 20 feet of concrete, had become sovereign soil. A fortress without walls. A throne without a crown. My quiet rebellion had reshaped the community. Not through shouting. Not through violence. But through precision, patience, and an unshakable understanding of their own rules. That's the part they never saw coming. And now, when I sit on my porch each morning, coffee in hand, I don't just see the empty driveway. I see the battlefield. The place where they tried to push and I pushed back harder. Not with fists, but with fine print. With bylaws. With silence that screamed louder than their commands. So yes, they asked me to join the HOA. But why would I? I already run the place. From the throne of my unobstructed driveway.